introduction to one of my favorite people on earth, Mr. Stephen Oliver, who is with the Advisor Marketing Podcast. Now, Stephen is a true maverick, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only in our business, but I have to tell you, his clients universally love him, and they grow at rates that they wouldn't believe it's possible. Now, on this podcast, in each episode, Stephen is joined by various members of his team or special guests to share insider secrets to rapid growth and high net profits in your financial advisory practice. So I just want you to know you're in for a wild ride, new information, and a lot of exciting new future because of Stephen Oliver.
Okay, we're good. Hey, Stephen Oliver again. Welcome back to our Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast. Hey, Robyn, I have a very special guest today, Robyn Crane. And Robyn, we're I come from very different circles, I think, but very closely aligned in our thinking. Everything I know about you, I've been doing the deep dive. I've got two of your four now best-selling books on my desk here, and have been reading through your LinkedIn profile, your bios and background. But you started as a financial advisor a few years ago, spent about 10 years actively.
A little longer, yeah.
Yeah, a little longer. CFP and one thing or another. And one of the things you said somewhere along the line resonated with me, and I want to have you get a little bit more of your background, but you said, most of the companies are still doing things the way your grandfather did it, and it doesn't work anymore. That's I could paraphrase that, and it's exactly my theme throughout. We sent you my marketing book, and you'll see the first chapter is basically in your face of, all of those companies suck. So, hey,
yeah, I mean, nicely said. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, my background as a financial advisor. So I actually got licensed in 2006, and I kind of did things in a very unconventional way because I struggled myself as a financial advisor, and being an ambitious overachiever, it was kind of incongruent to feel like I worked hard, but I couldn't get the result. And I find that a lot with the advisors that I attract right now is that, they come to me, they work really hard. That's not the problem. And the way that it was very much sold to me, and it's still sold to people like this, is, oh yeah, you can make $100,000 your first year. It's easy. Just do X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z is pretty much, make your list of 100, and they say 200 now. That's how bad it's gotten. And so you're basically going to friends and family, create centers of influence. Well, I was, relationships with centers of influence. And I was 29 years old. I was a singer-songwriter like 6 weeks before, and like, now who's going to trust me to be this like hot financial advisor, hot off the presses, like ready to go. And like, all of a sudden I have all these incredibly, great connections of COIs with high net worth clients. Like, they're not going to be referring them to me. And so, and then it was just like networking and pound the pavement, dial for dollar stuff. And so I did those things, whatever they told me to do. I didn't feel very congruent about it, but I did it anyway, because I'm coachable. I'll do it. But it didn't work. And to be a financial advisor who is, struggling with money and trying to help other people be wealthy, but then getting further in debt feels like an imposter. I felt like a fraud. And so I just was like, looking for other ways to do things. And so I did kind of build more of a coaching business, a money coaching business, because I just found I was better at helping people more around the behavioral stuff and the psychology. And then because I felt like I needed help so badly with sales and marketing that I had to go outside of the industry to actually learn the real way to do it. I would dare to say the right way to do it. And then as it started to work for me, then I started to teach it, because that's the best way for me to learn. So that's kind of my background. But I mean, along the way, I fell many, many times, but you fall, you just keep getting back up. Right. And I think a lot of the clients that I work with now really appreciate the fact that I was in the industry. I understand what's being taught. I understand stupid compliance, and all that, and kind of how to go around that and how to work with compliance so that you can do things outside of the box and still build a brand yourself. And just that, that's a lot of what we do today.
It is not to pick on a small point, but it is amazing to me how terrified advisors are of compliance, and how limited their thinking is about what they can do. Compliance is a real, serious problem, and SEC, FINRA, everybody is getting pretty tight on some things. But that doesn't mean you can't be a personality. You can't be out there in the in the area. You can't be on social media. You can't be doing. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do that doesn't have anything to do with what a good compliance person would have any concern about whatsoever.
Yeah. And I think that's just reminds me of just something so missing in the industry is just having that personal brand. I just did an event which we're doing again called Position Yourself for Profits. And it's all about positioning yourself in a way to attract the right people to you. And for some people, that's super high net worth clients, but some people, it might be if they're selling annuities and life insurance, it might be slightly different. But we're looking at, well, if we could just get one client and then get that client 10 times, you'd be able to meet or exceed your revenue goal. And so that's the idea and the concept is we don't need a ton of clients, but in order to attract that person, you got to stand out, not to everybody, but to that person. And I teach a lot of LinkedIn strategies. And so I said, I told the audience, I said, if I took all of your LinkedIn profiles and I switched the pictures and the names, you probably wouldn't be able to find your own profile. Mm-hmm. Like that's how, like I guess I would just say boring it is, how same it is, how much of a lack there is of a personal brand, like no story. Some of my clients, like we go to their profiles and you see their picture and you see like their profile and you read, there's a story there. There's something about why they got in the industry or what compelled them or why they do what they do or who they work with that really stands out. And it doesn't stand out to everybody. The goal is to actually repel most people and attract other people. But you said financial advisors are afraid of compliance. I think they're even more afraid of actually repelling people. They're more afraid of doing something that might not, be a catch-all to everybody. They're more afraid to look stupid, more afraid to try something and someone not liking them. I don't know if that's just the world, because probably it's human nature. Because I know I definitely am like that. I have been like that. I had to work against my natural, state to just be like, oh, well, I got to go for transformation, not go just for being liked. But it definitely is like it's exciting to me because there's so many little things like that missing that could be, when changed and, when tweaked, can be so transformational, not just in their life, but in all these people's lives who need it for their finances, because most people in the world don't have enough or never will have enough. Right.
Yeah, I was running a group on Zoom yesterday of financial advisors, and everything you just said, the first couple of paragraphs, you could have replaced LinkedIn with website. And I was having the exact same conversation. I was saying I've looked at now, I don't know, probably 5,000 financial advisors' websites, and maybe 3 of them stick out in your mind, and the rest of them you could change their name. Totally. And it wouldn't make any difference. They're all exactly the same thing.
And websites, you don't even have to change their pictures, because most of the time you can't even find their pictures. Like you go to a financial advisor's website and you're like, well, I want to see you. I want to know who the heck I'd be talking to. And then you got to dig deep, and then it's in about, and then it's in the team. And then before you know it, you're like bored and you're gone, and you don't even know what the person looks like, or, who actually you'd be talking to. So it's true. You just exchange the names there. You don't even need pictures because they're hard to find.
Oh yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah, the conversation I was having yesterday is people need to know, like, and trust you. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned it with financial advisors, and of course I got started in a different niche with martial arts schools, and financial advisors are completely at the opposite end of the spectrum personality wise. And what it seems to me that if you were to take the worst niche, first group of people in the world, as far as all having a sameness contest, it's either advisors, CPAs, maybe attorneys, but there's some pretty interesting attorneys out there. I phrase it. I stole from Tim Ferriss's book. He talked about the old bald guy in the BMW convertible. I think of all advisors as like the guy in the JCPenney suit sitting behind the oak desk, trying to be no different from anybody else. The quote I was using yesterday was Tom Peters from years ago in Search of Excellence. He said most companies are their marketing is we're no worse than anybody else. And the financial advisors, I think it's we're the same as everybody, and they don't want to have any personal opinion because they don't want to repel. They don't want to really share much about them for whatever reason. But somehow they think that having a bunch of alphabet soup behind their name on their credentials, combined with being bland and boring, is going to get them somewhere. And you just say exactly what I would say is you want to stand out, be different, be interesting, and to the extent that you're going to be attractive, you have to repel.
I think it's a lot. It has a lot to do with the fact that they just don't know how. I know that the advisors that I work with, I mean, they've got personality. Like they got an opinion. They are, I mean, so committed to helping people. They're so drawn to making a difference, and it's incredible, like the drive, the people who get in the industry. And I'm sure there's some that are just greedy and want money, but it's very few and far between. Like the people that I engage myself with, I mean, they just have huge hearts. They want what's best. And the last thing they want to do is be salesy and try to, pounce on people, but they just don't know how. And so the industry is just indoctrinating them so much. And I know because I lived it. I mean, when I got in the industry, they're like, this is how you do it, essentially. First of all, of course, you can make $100,000 and all you got to do is this. And I'm like, okay, I did it. But then the scripts were just horrendous. I had to call my cousin, friends and family. And literally, I mean, like I said, I was a singer songwriter, weeks before, and I won't even say really weeks before, because it's not like I stopped being a singer songwriter, just stopped performing really. Yeah. But I remember calling my cousin, and the script was like, hey, hey, cuz, as you might have heard, I just became a financial advisor. I just passed my exams, like whoop-de frickin' do. Now I'm credible, and then, and I wanted to know if I could come over to your house and practice my presentation. I mean, practice my presentation. Like that's my credibility, is to say, I just learned, I got licensed, and then I might give my why, but I decided to join the industry because I'm really passionate about helping people. And can I practice my presentation? I go to her house with a supervisor, no less, which was horrible. And then I'm with her and her husband, go through the script. Let me tell you about my company. Let me tell you about me. Let me educate you with an upside down chart on what the market, looks like, so that they can see it across the kitchen table where they supposedly make financial decisions. And that's where they write checks. This is what the crap they told us, right? And I tell my clients this, and they still nod their heads. I know it's like 16, 17 years it's been, and they still nod their heads like, yes, Robyn, they still tell us that, and then it's like, so let me tell you about the company. Let me tell you about my why. Let me educate you. Then I'm going to do this fact finder, and find out where all your money is. It's not weird, even though I'm 10 years younger than you and I was a singer songwriter last week. No, it's not weird at all. Trust me, I'm cool. Wink, wink. And then I'm going to ask you what your goals are, short, medium, and long-term goals. And then I'm going to get the foot in the door, and I'm going to get, $300 into that Roth, or I'm going to take that rollover and put in the capital appreciation fund. And that's what I did, with my supervisor looking at me like, you better follow the script. I did it. And my cousin's like, I actually made that offer similar. And she's like, wait, are you serious? Like, no, and it was awkward for 2 years. And that's what they're taught to do. And so especially the overachievers, the ones that are coachable, the ones that, maybe if they're anything like I was, you didn't think you were smart, but you worked hard in school to get straight A's, so no one would know the difference. No one would know the truth that you're stupid. That's how I was. And those overachievers, those athletes, the ones that are willing to work hard will be coachable. They'll do what they're told. And then it's a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face, because then all of a sudden they don't feel congruent with it. So then they, overcompensate, and they stop asking for the sale, or they don't achieve, and they're like, wait, this doesn't make sense, but I'm doing this and I want to follow my heart, but now I'm going broke over it when I'm a financial advisor. Or maybe some of them get successful doing it with just grit and grind, right? And so, obviously there are a lot of people listening here that like are very successful financial advisors. And we're not saying you're boring, and we're not saying, you're ridiculous to follow the system. Because of course, over time, if you stick with anything for a decade, especially with recurring revenue, like being a financial advisor, it will work. But on the path, there's like, you're being yanked in all different directions, and mostly around your values. And that's where I'm trying to be like, let's do it the way that you're aligned with from the beginning. Or if you've been in this for 30 years, let's make those shifts. So you have a brand, you know who you're targeting in a way that's like going to be most transformational. And then you go through the system that you're congruent with, not that you're just told to do. So I know that was a rant, Stephen, but man,
that's good. It's wonderful.
I get going.
No, it's right on track. I tend to be a little bit more pessimistic, and I say that's why 95 to 97% of new advisors coming into companies fail in the first 2 years. Is they tell them to make their warm list and go beat on their family and their frat buddies and whoever else might be, which to me is, it's not that it's not a good strategy to figure out who you already know and work through who you already know. But years ago, one of my favorite stories is when I first moved to Colorado. I had about 4 months before I opened my first business, and I went and interviewed on every sales job that I could find. I wanted more sales background. And one of the interviews I went to was a cattle call for literally the companies that go door to door and sell vacuum cleaners. And literally what their business model is you bring in a bunch of 20 somethings to sell vacuum cleaners. You send them home with a vacuum. They sell one to mom and dad and the cousin. And in most cases they're done. And that's about the business. And the first time I saw some of the big companies that I work with, their recruiting, their training process and so forth, I just flashed back to the vacuum cleaner thing. I'm like, couldn't you be a little bit more sophisticated than the vacuum guys
Right.
sending people, home to beat on their friends and family?
But the times have not changed. I mean, it's exactly the same as it used to be. Technology hasn't changed. Everything is exactly the same. Wait a second. No, that's not true.
Nope.
Like everything's changed except for the tactics, except for the strategies, the marketing strategies and sales strategies being taught in the industry. And it's what bothers me the most is that then a lot of the advisors who have the potential to be extremely successful, who would be the best at helping more people, not just the poor people, but helping people who actually have money in a way that they can now become better leaders because they're not shackled by their problems around money, is that those advisors don't reach their full potential because they start sabotaging their success because they're not congruent with the strategies, because they don't want to be pouncy. They don't want to go to a networking event and have everybody run away from them. Oh, here comes the advisor, and I'm in as I'm sure you are, in high level masterminds, in one with Damon John. And I mean, these guys, like, they think of advisors as being very pouncy. I like to use that word, but it's like, you go to a networking event and then people, like, the advisors are coming and hunting for you. Right. And I don't think that's necessarily true for everybody, but it's the ones that don't want to be like that are missing the opportunities and not knowing that there's another way where you don't have to be, let's call it quote unquote pouncy. You don't have to go after everyone, but you really have an intention to be like, who is the person that I really want to serve? And that's going to not only help them, but also is going to allow me to build my business and build my wealth. Because I find a lot of advisors as well, like, they think they got to work with everybody. And they're like, well, I feel bad, And so then they're, let's say the newer advisors are going and working with, young 30 to 40-year-olds going like, well, I feel bad because they need the help. But then they're struggling to get their attention. I'm like, well, they need the help, but you're not the ones that help them. They don't have any money yet. Go help the people that you got licensed to help, which means you have to manage money, which means they have to have some, more than that. Right. Yeah. So it's, but it's such an amazing industry and such an amazing, I don't want to say job, but I guess business, that it's just such a shame that a lot of people are unaware that there are better ways to do it. And that's why you and I are just so passionate about showing the ways, because it's something you can't be congruent with. It's something absolutely that can make you a ton of money in a way that's like, it's only a validator of you being a huge impactor in your community and in the world. And you can do it online, like whether it's LinkedIn, website, like all the stuff, like there's just such easier ways. It's just that, we're the ambassadors here trying to get that information out so people know that it's possible and it's like within your fingertips. So
yeah, let's do some nuts and bolts. You talked about a primary source that you use is LinkedIn. Let's talk about some of your LinkedIn strategies. I've been doing a lot with people on LinkedIn. I see you have as well. What are some of the things that you teach the advisors that are working really well right now?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I mean, I will say LinkedIn is a tough animal. And the reason is because it's as big of an opportunity as it is a problem because of the opportunity. Sure. So it's crazy not to use LinkedIn because there's so much opportunity there. But if you can't stand out, like a lot of advisors who are using LinkedIn, they've tried it and they have not been successful because they just go in there, they find someone who has something in common, because this is often what's taught. And I hope I don't know what you teach on LinkedIn, so I hope I'm not saying anything that you teach, but what I've noticed is that, maybe they were in college together, or they had an old job together. And so they just have some connection point, which takes a lot of time for me to go find you. Let's say Stephen, and I say, Stephen, hey, remember, let's say it's 10 years from now, remember we did that podcast. Now I have to write a customized message to you. Like, want to jump on I'm a financial advisor now, I want to jump on and have a conversation. And it's a little awkward, right? Sure. Even if it's true, even if we have a real connection. And then how do you conduct that meeting in a way that makes sense with what you said? Hey, let's just chat, let's just catch up, and then make it actually drive action, make it have conversions, right? And so I just find that a lot of advisors are doing that sort of thing on LinkedIn, which is very time consuming. and it works, but not often getting the highest level clients, but getting some clients. It's definitely not predictable. And it takes, I said it's time consuming, but it doesn't position you in a way that has like very high credibility. So what we do is, I mentioned it, but I didn't use the name, but the system that I like to use, I call it the rule of 10. And the way I think of it again is this, and it's really, all this is under the umbrella of my revenue accelerator system, but I'll give it to you in a nutshell. So, let me give you the revenue accelerator system first. So the revenue accelerator system are 5 pillars. First is mindset. So, Steve and I, we talked before we started, like we both focus on that because everybody knows who's successful, that mindset is everything, but no one wants to like raise their hand and admit, yeah, that's what I really need help with typically. Right. But let's bypass that for now. So the second step is market. These are all M's, so you can all write them down and easy to remember. But market, what I mean by market is like, who is the market? Who's that ideal person that you want to attract? And this is what I call the rule of 10. The rule of 10 means that if I can only get one person, one client, but I can get that client 10 times, I can clone, quote unquote, clone that client 10 times, then I'd be able to meet or exceed my revenue goal. And it's really, really simple in the industry because most people who come to me, at least, even if they have 100 million under management, which is usually a 7-figure business, what do they want? Another 10 million this year. And then another 10 million, because that's, an extra 100 grand that they get year after year after year, plus, the market goes up. So that's, and sometimes it's 20, and sometimes it's 30, but it's like, if even just to get 10 million is like pretty good for anyone, even if they're like killing it, right? Of new clients that don't come from referrals, that actually come from outbound marketing that's intentional.
It's Lee Milt here, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
Not just like because you got lucky and someone referred you, right? So when we identify who's that one person, that's what we call a clone. And then we want to make sure the money math makes sense because it's less effort and then you can make more money in less time and you can make a bigger impact. So let's say we're doing this and LinkedIn is one of those platforms that we'll use. Well, then once we know who it is, we need to have the third step of the revenue accelerator system is the message. We need to craft compelling messaging. You bet. And I'm really good at messaging, but if you tell me you're working with retirees, I can't craft any messaging because retirees is not a person. Retirees is like, it's not even an avatar. It's like a demographic. And like millions of people who are retired are completely different than millions of other people that are retired. So I'm like, okay, so it's, first of all, I wouldn't go for retirees if I was doing LinkedIn. So I want to make sure it's someone, we call this ideal client cloning test. It's someone that I would love working with. I would provide tremendous transformational value. I get paid well for it, and I can find them online, ideally LinkedIn, if we're going to use LinkedIn, which we typically do. So then I might find an executive, or I might find a business owner, but business owner is too broad. So I'm like, but it's a clone. That means it's one person. It can't be a demographic. Who's the person? So one of the guys I just started working with, I said, well, who do you want to clone? And he's like, I don't know. It's always hard for people, right, to pick. And I'm like, it's not niching. It's not even target marketing. Just like one person. If you clone them 10 times, you'd meet or exceed your revenue goal. So we're like, okay, if it was 100 grand, that means you need to make $10,000 from one person. That could be $1 million under management, or it could be a combination with financial planning and life insurance and AUM and whatnot. And so he had some options. He said federal employees, and he told me some stories about that. And he had, attorneys could be one. I haven't worked with them, but that would be a good idea. And, we have these levels, but I'll bypass that for now. Anyway, he told me about one client he worked with who's an owner of a commercial cleaning company. Mm-hmm. And I have no idea. I mean, I've never targeted that person, right? So I'm like, I go on LinkedIn. I'm like, all right, let's see what we get, right? Like thinking like it's going to be very small, right? I put in owner commercial cleaning and it was huge, right? It's like, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people at least. Yeah. And I'm like, this could be awesome, and then we could put other targeting around that to make sure that they've been, in business at least 10 years and whatnot. So we know who the clone is. It's an owner of a commercial cleaning company. And then we need a message. So how do we do the message? Well, couple different ways that I do messaging, but we need a hook. So we need a hook no matter what your message is. And I have two things that we often use. One, I call it direct approach messaging. Which is going to be like, well, what does really that person want? What's the promise? And I got to come up with a hook that's going to make them respond. So my hook, this will give you all an example that I send out on LinkedIn, or I have sent out on LinkedIn, is finding $1 million AUM clients online doesn't have to be difficult or time consuming. Okay. So there's a hook, and it's specific, because I used to say finding ideal clients, and like people didn't respond as well as if I said $1 million AUM clients. Right. And so I'm going to repel some people who might call themselves a financial advisor, but they only sell insurance, which I might say, oh no, but I could really help them. Oh, that really sucks. But no, I got to be willing to repel people in order to compel more people. And so that's an example of just like who I want, who's the one person I get attract. So for this guy, we come up with a hook, or we can do indirect messaging, which is indirect would be, we use the strategy about an interview where you actually would say, hey, can I interview you? And oftentimes a lot of my clients end up writing books. My husband, actually, you should have him on this podcast, but he has a hybrid publishing company. So he helps a lot of people, business owners, write books and use their book to market their business. So we start marketing the business with the idea of the book before we even write the book. And I have my clients do that and consider writing a book. So that's, there's a lot of details there, but basically we have a hook, and the hook is really important, because otherwise, if you sound like everybody else, it doesn't make sense. And if you're targeting a big group, or you're just talking to everybody, it's not detailed enough and it's not compelling. And so you need to be clear on what does that owner of a commercial cleaning company really want that's different than the construction owner, or what that's different than the executive, that's different than the marketer, that's different than whomever. And that's hard. Like, I'm not going to say that's easy. That's hard. That's why we sometimes use the interview thing, because it's a little faster and easier. So that's messaging, and messaging is a big, huge animal. I always say at my event, we talk like a ton about messaging. We do this thing called channeling the clone, where I teach you how to get the messaging out of your head. But you learn how to do that, but it's a work in progress. Like, and I'm sure with Stephen and I, like, we're constantly changing our messaging because the world's changing and all these things. So, anyway, so that's the messaging. Number 4 is the money-making activities. And I always say when the money-making activities stop, so does the money-making. And how many advisors are prospecting, but they're not actually making money from some of those prospecting activities, or they say they're marketing and they're not making money from this thing. So I want to make sure the money-making activities are making you money. Otherwise, you don't do them. And if they're not making you money, either tweak them or don't do them, or you need to make sure that whatever you're doing, you call it prospecting, which everybody hates, but they do. You got to make sure that it's actually working and making you money. So that's where we go to the platform. Maybe it's LinkedIn. You could do this on any social media platform, really, but you could do it networking. If you even said networking, it's not my favorite place to go. But if you said, okay, if I'm going to network, well, wait, let me go back to the beginning. Mindset, got to have the right mindset. Who's the clone? That's the market. So if it's attorneys and you go networking to a group that doesn't have any attorneys, well, that doesn't make any sense, because you're not going to make any money. And you don't want to just do money-making activities that are like someday, somehow, like networking, or like, just centers of influence is great, but it might take 2 years before you get a referral. We need short-term money-making activities. And LinkedIn, we've gotten clients within 7 days, so sometimes you get first touch and then they become a client, depending on how you can charge, but usually 3 weeks it can happen, but it doesn't mean it does with everyone, but it could. And then the last thing is monetize, which is sales. And financial advisors typically hate sales. They don't want to be salesy. I didn't either. I was afraid of sales. What I realized is that it was hurting people to not have conversion strategies that could get them out of their own way so they can get what they want. So now I'm a big proponent of just learning how to sell in a way that's not salesy, and learning how to sell in a way that's like providing tremendous transformational value. We call it the high impact conversion framework, so that they have a framework, not necessarily a script, but a framework that's going to give them incredible value. So that was a lot, but that's one of the ways we use LinkedIn, but it's always under this whole system, because it doesn't have to be LinkedIn. It could be some other platform or some other, it could be networking. If you're going to a mastermind with Damon John, is a great thing. I have financial advisors in my mastermind and they're killing it. They're in like the top 1,000, because that's where they spend 30 to 60,000 to maybe $100,000 in a mastermind to get to the right people. But if you don't even know who you're looking for, then you don't need to know where to go in order to get in front of them.
Yeah. And you said a lot there. And so
a lot. I know. Did you get all that?
Well, let's unpack it a little bit. One of the and I'm gonna slip on your language for the person to clone, but I tend to go at it exactly the same way, maybe looking at it a little differently. But first time working with an advisor, I always have, let's go through your list of your current clients. Who are you the best fit with? Who is making you the most money with the least headaches? Who do you like the best? Who's the best fit? Same idea of exactly what you're talking about. And now let's go get more of them. And oftentimes you go through that list, and what you find out is they've already got a bunch of something already. They just haven't, thought of it, targeted, perhaps even looked at it. I went through one advisor's list, and he was doing real well in private equity, people who are in private equity. And he was doing, another one was doing really well with commercial real estate brokers. It's like, well, okay, obviously you click with commercial brokers. Who's your best one? Same idea.
Right.
Okay, we can get to them. Go back to just to reemphasize something you said already is, having a target audience like everybody who's over 50. Everybody's over 50 who has $500,000 or more to invest. That you can't target that, right?
No.
I can target owners of commercial cleaning company. I can target owners. I was working with another one we were working with big general contractors, owners of big general contracting companies. And a lot of times I find anymore, many advisors, maybe not all, but instead of coming out of the college recruiting, they have a background. I work with a gentleman who's a former chief of police in an area. So he's a natural for us to go after police.
Right.
The police commissioner is one thing or another. I have another one who's a former military officer.
I was going to say, I got a lot of guys that are military. Yeah. Well, women too. Yeah.
So it is funny when people change careers into this, they have a tendency to kind of like abandon the old thing rather than say, well, you were a chiropractor for 20 years. You know how they speak and how they think and how to talk to them. A good friend of mine, he's not a client, but he does exactly what an advisor does, other than he puts them into real estate. And he's a former dentist. He has a very compelling story about his daughter who was sick, and he had to not run the practice full time, figure out how to make a living without running the practice. And now he's got an 8-figure company. He calls it Freedom Founders. That's designed to show dentists how to retire. And he's not just targeting dentists. He has a very, clear box of who it is he's looking for, and is very good at attracting them. And I don't know why it's such a foreign concept to people, but if you don't get a real clear picture of who you're looking for, there's no way to target them. You just end up scattershotting and wasting all your effort.
I mean, I think it is a lot of brainwashing that's like unintentional. Like, I don't think the industry is trying to say, we just want you to work hard and not really get the results as fast. I think there's just it's very archaic. I talk a lot about how the industry is just archaic and outdated, and they don't put a lot of resources into keeping their advisors. Interestingly enough, especially when I was just working with women in the past, there's a lot of initiatives to get more women into the industry. Like, there's all these women initiatives, right? Same with diversity and inclusion. It's like there's a lot of initiatives to have more diversity at the companies, but there's not a lot to keep them there to have them be successful. So, it's like if I go and try to do a talk at a company and I say, I'm doing diversity and inclusion, like they're more likely to bring me in than if I say, I'm going to help your existing advisors grow their business. And I don't know what the fear is or why it's like that. I don't really understand, but it's not, it seems like that just makes, it's like, we all know as marketers, like, you got to get the clients and then you got to keep the clients. Like there's only 3 ways to make money, right? You got to get new clients, or you got to sell to existing clients, meaning keep them longer, or you got to raise your prices and get more from those clients.
Make more per client,
right? Yeah. Right. So make more from those clients. So it's almost like the industry got lazy because there's recurring revenue and there's very low attrition, which is what a godsend. I mean, it's so awesome that you get $1 million. That's 10,000. And then you get that year after year forever. And the market goes up. So you actually make more from that client. Like, but then you thought you got into this business because you love helping people with their money. And you realize what you're really doing is servicing clients and paperwork and helping them take money out. And it's like, this is why advisors are not feeling very fulfilled, is because they got into it for the excitement of helping people and doing the planning and changing their life. And then what happens is they get too many clients because they're not getting the ideal ones, are getting too much of the, high maintenance ones that take too much time, that don't make them enough money. And now they're all of a sudden servicing. And like, they don't really know how to grow their business. They never really were taught. And it's just a servicing model. And then I get frustrated, and it's like, there's this lack of fulfillment. So I think it's just interesting how there's not a lot of focus on that. And almost anyone, like everyone who comes to me, they know, they're well aware that they're not good, especially at marketing. They're actually not aware that they're not good at sales, because everybody thinks they're good at sales because they close 80% of referrals, but they're not good at sales. I just think they are.
They close 80% of the two new people they get in the door.
Right. Exactly. But they're very aware that they're bad. They don't think they're good at marketing, and they don't really like it. And I was the same way. I didn't like sales or marketing. And it was because I didn't understand how it could be valuable in itself. We're marketing right now. And most of the people listening will never work with either one of us, ever, ever, ever. We're having fun. We're giving valuable information. And someone is going to listen to this, and their life will change, because they will. They're going to work with you, or they're going to work with me. They're going to move forward, and their life will change. And we did our job, right? Yeah. And we had fun doing it. But it's like there's this unattachment. Like, we don't care if someone works with us or not. We love it. But it's like we're doing it because we know that real marketing is providing value in itself. Real marketing isn't calling up your cousin and being like, can I practice my presentation? Like, there's no value, right? Yeah, you're asking for a favor. But when you do real marketing, there's value in every point of conversion. So whether they go to the next step or not, or they just learn from you, if you think of it that way, that every time I market to someone, I'm giving them some value, something for them to think about, something for them to learn, something, even if it's just a hook, like, oh, I never thought that I can get $1 million AUM clients online, on LinkedIn. Like that even itself, even the hook is something for them to like start thinking about. So I like to think of it that way, as like there's value along the entire path. And then it starts to feel good instead of feeling like you're just like pouncing on people and just trying to get something out of them. Because every time a client decides to work with you, they have a better life, not you. They're the ones that are having a better life financially because you took them on as a client, and it's the tables have turned. You bet. And that distinction is huge.
Yeah. You mentioned something. We were talking before. I worked a lot with Dan Kennedy and any number of others. Never with Damon John, but I follow all of his stuff. But Kennedy's line is that most people suffer from marketing incest. They look around what everybody else is doing, do the same thing. A line I like even better goes back to Earl Nightingale, which is, if you're in a business and you don't have a proven success system, look at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. And I think that's exactly right in this industry. If people are telling you make your warm 100 list or your warm 200 list and go talk to all of your family and friends, let's take a better approach. I was involved with, at a very high level, a study that was done, and they were polling clients of financial advisors, and you mentioned the turnover is very low. It was interesting. Their study showed that 65% of clients of financial advisors, I may be butchering the numbers, but it was 60 to 70%, aren't particularly impressed with their person, right? 30% are thinking about leaving at any one time. And yet the industry, the turnover is mostly people die and they don't, follow through with their kids or something like that. So there's a fairly low turnover, mostly what I would term paying a disconnect. Is, once you have somebody handling all your finances. In fact, a lot of times I think the turnover is people just start giving a portion to somebody else, and now they've got 2 or 3 people handling it because they never fired the first person. But if those numbers are anywhere near accurate, 65% are unimpressed, a third are thinking about leaving. One of the biggest questions I get from advisors is, why don't I get more referrals? Why don't my clients send me more people? Well, if they're not particularly impressed with you, if they hear from you once a year, if you're not communicating, and again, it's the value of books, podcasts, email newsletters, physical newsletters, all of that kind of stuff. How do you address that with advisors? I really think there's kind of a sameness, boring, and most of their clients aren't particularly impressed with them.
Yeah, I think one answer to that question that what they're asking, why aren't they getting more referrals? I think a big answer to that, though, is because they're not asking, and they don't know how to ask in a way that's not awkward. Because I think I'd like to believe, and statistics are statistics, but it's like, I'd like to believe that typically the advisors who I work with, I really think their clients love them. And I did work with women mostly in the first 7 out of 8 years, but, and not to say anything negative about dudes, but it's like women are very nurturing. They overcompensate to a degree. Like they make their clients become their best friends. Sure. It's like they want to provide so much that at a fault sometimes that it hurts their business because they'll do anything. Right. And so I think the clients, at least who come to me, I don't think their number one thing is like that their clients are actually thinking of leaving, unless it's because they're just so inundated because they have too many and they can't ever create systems. And there's just, they're kind of scattered because it's hard to juggle all of that. But I would say the number one reason I think that they're not getting enough referrals is because they're not asking. They don't know how to ask. And I'm not going to tell them to say, hey, can I have a referral? Like that ain't it.
It's Lee Milt here, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
Like there's a system to it. We call that the clone your client system. But you go to your client. I mean, you got to use an approach that makes them feel good, that they don't feel like they're helping you grow. The gist of the system is, without like taking too much time, is that they have to believe, and this is very important in marketing. It's always down to the beliefs, because beliefs drive behaviors and behaviors drive results. So the client who you want to refer you want them to do something, which is a behavior. So you need to think like a marketer. You need to put your marketer hat on and say, well, in order for them to behave in the way that I want, which is to refer me, they need to believe something. What are those beliefs? And so I talk a lot about at our PYFP event. We talk about this whole thing. It's, this kind of like beliefs influence behaviors and results, and how messaging plays a role in that. But basically, if you want someone to behave a certain way, which is give you a referral, they need to believe certain things. And it's not one thing, it's many things. And so those things are that, my advisor's not going to just try to sell my family or friends. They really care about people. I'm not doing this, like, I'm not referring my friends and family to help grow their business, which is usually, like, oftentimes when they ask for referrals, advisors make it sound like they're doing it as a favor, like to help them grow the business, like they could care. It's like when I have a real estate, let's just say a real estate agent who sells me the house, and after they sell the house, they're like, hey, I love referrals, because this is how I grow my business. And you get that card, right? That nice card in the mail that says, thank you so much for buying this house. Cause now, like, they pull up in a new Mercedes, right? And you did that, you helped them with that. And you're like, whoop-de-doo. And they're like, now can you give me a referral because I want a new Mercedes? And you're like, no, I don't care about your Mercedes or your BMW or whatever. It's like, because the belief behind it is that I don't want to ever put myself at risk of judgment that my neighbors or my friends or my family might think that I'm trying to sell them by referring them to this realtor. Same thing with advisors. And money is like the most emotional subject we can, people say sex and politics, screw that. Talk about money. Like that's the hardest thing for people to talk about. People probably talk about orgasms before they talk about money, right? Are you still there? Okay. I dropped the O word. My computer popped up with a message. Don't say the O word. Don't say the O word. So they're all those beliefs. They need to believe. So I'll tell you what they do need to believe. They need to believe that you're on a mission to help people. They need to believe that you're doing it because you care so much about the other people. They need to believe that it's not to grow your business. They need to believe that it's worth their time if their friends and family met with you, that you would provide so much value, whether they work with you or not. They need to believe that their friends and family would get a great deal. They need to believe that, that they would be the hero in this story, like in the hero's journey, that like, oh God, thank you so much for referring me to, Samantha. She's the best advisor on the planet. Like, it's all because of you. Like, they want credit, right? They don't want their their friend coming back and being like, Samantha just tried to sell me a stupid financial plan and like she didn't even listen to me, right? Mm-hmm. So all those beliefs like have to happen, and there's hundreds of them really, and you don't only need to really be aware of like the top 5, but those are driving the behaviors of like them wanting to refer you. Mostly it's because they're aligned with your mission and aligned with your values, and they want to help their friend or family, not because they give a crap about helping you in your business. Yeah, and if that's in place, then you'll get referrals.
And the idea that you introduced earlier of what client do you want to clone, and cloning that client is very powerful in that area as well, right? If you're the expert for whatever it might be, commercial cleaners, the contractors, the dentist, if you're the expert that really has worked with me in that business and had a tremendous example, they all know a lot of others, right? And it gives them somebody to look for. It gives them something to target. It gives them a sense of they're going to do their friend a value rather than vice versa. Hey, we could go on forever, and I had about 5 more questions for you, but I know we both have a hard stop here. Your podcast, let's make sure the Transformational Financial Advisor. Did I get that right?
Transformational Advisor podcast. And, depending on when you listen to this, we're just relaunching it with that new title. And so, and I do feel, just to mention a little bit about it, as we're launching it, is just, I really believe that the advisors that are really in it to make a bigger difference, like not only do they want to be a transformational advisor in the sense of they want to transform other people's lives, but also in the sense of transforming their own lives and their family. And like, you deserve that. It's so many advisors like aren't where they want to be, and they should be. And they're the ones that, need to be, because they're the ones that are going to change the world. So I think that's really important in many areas. And then I wanted to also give all the listeners an opportunity to come to the event, because this event, I talk about transformation. I mean, this is crazy, because I know it sounds like you have a lot of background in personal development, not just business growth, but it's like all the people that are the most successful in the world have done a ton of personal growth. And I never tell people this about the event, because it's almost like, surprise, this is a business growth within personal development. You didn't really know, but it's like this combination. Day 1, we talk about mindset, and then we get into the ideal clone. So there's a ton of strategy, but there's like the whole thread throughout is how you need to step up and become the person you're meant to be in order to attract everything you want. Then all backed up by a ton of strategies around the LinkedIn stuff, and how do you clone this person, and how do you reverse engineer it so you make the money? Because my book is called Make More Money, Help More People. Like I know that the only way for you to really transform people's lives is when you make more money. And so the byproduct is that you're going to help so many more people. So I will teach you how to do all those things, and the sales stuff and monetize. Like, it's just so good. People who come to this event, they're in disbelief. Like, I can't even believe, because we charge hardly anything for you to come to the event. And it's totally transformational, but you got to come the whole 3 days. It's virtual, so anyone come from anywhere, but we'll make sure the link's in the show notes. It's just, It's so good. You got to check it out, because it is truly going to make such a huge impact in your life and others.
And you have one coming out about mid-April, about the time this podcast probably drops, but then the next one's in May. What's the date?
May 8th we have. So if this comes out later, it's April 17th through the 19th. And then we have another one, May 8th through the 10th. So we just want to make such a huge difference in people's lives. And just like you, Stephen, I mean, we just feel like people just don't know. They don't know a way to grow their business, and it's very frustrating. And this is like everything, like, here's exactly how to do it. You won't be confused anymore. And unless it's not aligned, you're going to want to do it. You're going to want to change your approach so that you get better results in a lot less time. So it's pretty awesome.
You just described as the last thing, the hidden secret of the top 1% of business coaches, whether it's predominantly focused on marketing, sales, business operations, staff development, is everybody wants to come into the group to make more money. And then what you have to do is spend 90% of your time fixing their ability to see the world, expanding their mindset, expanding their self-talk, their ability to visualize what they're doing, all of that stuff. But they don't come in the door thinking that's what they need. They come in the door thinking, if I could just get 4 more new clients, I'd be happy. If I could get 5 more new prospects, I'd be happy. Well, on that note, we got to wrap it up, but let's follow up. I really appreciate it. And I'd love to talk to your husband too about what he does with books, and maybe we can plug you back in on making them best.
Sounds great. And then we'll, keep an eye out, everybody listening here, for having Stephen on my podcast, because we will definitely get that moving too.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.